Hi, I'm Bryce Crittenden.
Hi, I'm Caroline Land, and welcome back to EPL's Overdue Finds.
Caroline, welcome back. How are you today?
I'm doing really well, Bryce. It is so great to be talking with you again.
Yeah, obviously you've been away for, like 4 or 5 episodes at least. So, it's awesome to have you. I was going to say it's awesome to have you back in studio, but we are not in.
We're still not.
No, exactly. I'm still recording from my kitchen table as I have been for the last 4 months. But no, it's great to have you back again. And I also want to say thank you as well to both Kate Gibson and Meg DeForest, who were helping fill in for you while you were away. And Meg too was also helping doing some of the editing and everything, and will still continue to do that. Big props to them for stepping in.
We really do have a great Overdue Finds family, and knowing that the podcast was in great hands was really great to hear while I was away.
Nice. Good. Well, today, Caroline, I think we're going to have a lot of fun on today's show because, it's summer. People are looking for different things to read, especially adults like ourselves, Caroline, who especially really like the young adult genre of books. And that's what we're going to be chatting all about today, because we're talking about the Young Readers' Choice Awards, which is something that, if you have kids who are in school, they know all about it, but a lot of adults might not, right, Caroline?
Absolutely. And this is an award that is really important and meaningful for the kids who take part in it. It means a lot to the authors who win. And I'm really excited to share what this award is with people who might not have heard about it.
Yeah, so joining us today to chat about the Young Readers' Choice Awards is librarian Kyle Marshall. Kyle, welcome back to Overdue Finds. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be here, Bryce. I'm especially excited to be chatting with both you and Caroline, since our paths haven't crossed on Overdue Finds yet. So this being the third appearance, I'm hoping I get friend of the show status, and I'll be expecting my collectible plate in the mail shortly.
Definitely. We are working on those collectible plates. We were joking around with Pilar. She was just on, and we let Pilar know that since it was her third appearance, that she is now officially friend of the show. So Kyle, that of course means now that since this is your third appearance, that it's also you are also now officially a friend of Overdue Finds. You were just on with us. It was probably about maybe a month and a half ago with Emily Riddle chatting all about some LGBTQ reads, right?
That's right. Yeah, we had a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to my fourth appearance to be the Rick Steves fan cast. That'll be the two of us, right?
Yes, definitely. Caroline, are you a Rick Steves fan?
I not yet. Is what I can say? But after listening to that episode, I was already ready to subscribe for your Rick Steves Fancast podcast.
Definitely.
And I was so excited when I saw, Kyle, that you were going to be our guest today, because I was really disappointed not to have recorded with you on that topic earlier in the summer. So I'm glad that we have the chance to chat today.
Yeah. Caroline, we promise we won't chat too much about Rick Steves today for you.
Oh, don't hold back on my account. I think, whenever there's that much genuine passion and excitement, it makes for good audio.
All right. So before we get kind of into today's Overdue Finds, one of the cool things about doing a library podcast, and Caroline, I know you can attest to this, is that occasionally we have other libraries reach out to us and just say hi, and maybe they have questions about podcasting. So it's been really cool to interact with a lot of different libraries around North America, and actually, as of last week, the world. So before we get started, I just want to say a quick hi to a couple libraries who are starting their own podcasts. I want to say hi to Courtney at the Spruce Grove Public Library. They're going to be starting their own podcast soon, so watch for that. And Chris at Culture NL Libraries in North Lanarkshire, Scotland. I probably said that wrong, but they have a podcast that they just recently started called For the Love of Books. So it was really cool. I've been chatting with a few other libraries, really around the world, chatting about podcasting, and they've been kind of asking us how we do ours. And yeah, we wish them all the best. And if you want to fill up your feed with other library podcasts, watch for those shows. All right, so let's get into our recent overdue finds. Kyle is our guest and now official friend of the show. What have you been enjoying lately?
So I just finished Good Talk, a memoir in conversations by Mira Jacob. As the title suggests, it is a memoir that is told through the many conversations the author has with family, friends, and colleagues. They often revolve around race in America and the author's experiences as the daughter of Indian immigrants. The chapters often frame her life through major world events as Jacob is confronted with the hope, the ignorance, as well as kind of the absurdity in Bush's post 9/11 America, Obama's election, as well as the rise of Donald Trump. And many of these conversations occur with her biracial son as he's trying to make sense of it as a 6-year-old with those events backdropping his life. So as the reader, we feel like we were casually just eavesdropping on her life. It's a really smooth and engaging book throughout. I was turning the pages really quickly. The illustration style is also quite unique. The characters are showing up as black and white cutouts with really just the backdrops that changed to reflect the setting. Yeah, can't recommend it enough. It was a fantastic read.
Nice. So is that a graphic novel then?
It is, yeah, absolutely. Sorry, it's a graphic novel. Oh, I don't know if I said that. So she's a writer herself. I don't know if the illustrations were done by someone else. But again, it was quite a simple style. Yeah, I think that she probably had a hand in doing the illustrations.
Nice. It's we've chatted quite a bit about graphic novels on the show, and yeah, those stories I find it's funny because you can only read so many superhero stories before you kind of maybe want something a little bit more realistic, I guess. And yeah, it's always great getting those recommendations like that because I do find with some of those stories, especially the ones that are really personal like that, they translate so well to graphic novels. And obviously, I think the art really helps maybe tell that story a little bit better. But yeah, I that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's a trend for historical fiction or even teaching history to kids. I know there's a really famous Louis Riel graphic novel that a lot of teachers are using. It really brings to life that history that some people can't really visualize on their own.
Yeah, definitely. Caroline, before we hit record, you mentioned that you've been watching a ton of movies.
I really have.
So is it safe to assume your overdue finds pick this week is a movie?
It is. I was going to maybe try to mix it up. I will in the coming weeks and the coming recordings, not go back to the movie well so often. But yeah, the one I want to talk about today was actually a movie that I had on hold. I was waiting for it at the library. And then around the second week of March, it was in transit. And then we closed. And it remained in transit for several months. But I was lucky enough to discover it was available for streaming through EPL. So I was able to watch The Farewell by Lulu Wang.
So good.
Yeah, which is a movie that stars Awkwafina as a young woman who lives in the United States, and she discovers that her grandmother, who lives in China, is sick. The parents know, the entire family knows that the grandmother is sick and not expected to to live, but the grandmother doesn't know. They are keeping it from her because there's this idea that if she finds out she has cancer, just knowing that will be enough for her to give up and not fight or not try to pursue treatment. So the entire family is keeping this diagnosis from her. But in order to have a chance to kind of say goodbye, they orchestrate a fake wedding with one of Awkwafina's character's cousins. And so they arrive in China for the saddest wedding ever because it's actually kind of like a pre-funeral. But there's all these opportunities for conversations about kind of what family members owe to each other, what tradition means, what your heritage means, what your identity is, as well as how much of your life is really your own and what do you owe to other people. A lovely movie, directed by Lulu Wang. I really, really liked it. It wasn't kind of the happiest of movies, but definitely one that the performances just really sold me on it.
I have to ask, I hate to put you on the spot. How many tears were shed?
Oh, a ton, I think. A lot, because there are these really poignant moments in it where, as someone who, not to identify too much with the story, but as someone who lives several provinces away from the rest of her family, I was not always around my grandparents near the end of their life. And that's a little bit closer to go from Alberta to Ontario, which is where my family is, than it is to go from New York to China, which is the situation in the movie. But, how do you say goodbye to someone? There's, like all these things, because that's really what it is. It's the family kind of coming together to say goodbye. And, there are just these shots of people wanting to have these moments, but because the grandmother isn't in on it, they have to like pretend to be happy. So they're kind of smiling through tears, but their heart is breaking. It's just a really interesting story in terms of how we relate to each other, for sure.
Nice. Yeah. Sorry, Kyle, you were going to say something?
Oh yeah, I really enjoyed this movie as well. I watched it. I think I was in the same situation as Caroline. It was early on during the quarantine and the pandemic, after the closures, that I watched it. But it actually she first produced this, Lulu Wang, as a producer on This American Life, I think, in radio format. So for any listeners who like that, clearly if you like podcasts because you're listening to this, so I'd highly recommend that as a listen, unless you want to go into the movie unblemished in terms of your expectations. But it's a really touching story in both formats.
I will say, as a little, it might be a spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. So if you do want to go into the movie totally unaware, spoilers, but it's based on Lulu Wang's actual real life, where her grandmother was diagnosed and the family collectively decided not to tell her that she was sick. And I'm not going to talk about the end of the movie, but in real life, Lulu Wang's grandmother is still alive.
Mm-hmm.
So this movie came out about how we are not going to tell her she has cancer while the person is still like reading press about the movie. It's a that extra chapter on the real life story is just wild to me.
Maybe it sounds like maybe we need a follow-up like documentary on
yes about
from
Lulu Wang's grandmother. Yes, I would love that.
A quick shout out too to our marketing director, Anna Alfonso, because I know she was mentioning to me about that movie. I think it was a few months ago as well. And she was saying she couldn't like it enough. So but obviously sounds like a great movie and something I need to obviously check out. So my pick this week, as usual, my taste is all over the place, but for those who have been listening to the last few episodes, I've been talking a lot about video games lately, and I'm not actually recommending a video game per se this week, but more of a movie kind of about video games. It really is essentially a 90-minute commercial for Nintendo. Caroline, you might know where I'm going with this. My recommendation this week is the 1989 Fred Savage comedy, The Wizard.
Yeah.
So Caroline, we've talked a little bit about Super Mario Brothers 3 on this show in the past, and really, this, as a 10-year-old when this movie came out, this was my jam. Like, that was like, I remember going to the theater to see it on opening weekend with a friend. And of course, they have the big reveal of Super Mario Brothers 3. You got to find out where the warp zone was. So if you are of a certain age, like myself, you are definitely going to you're going to enjoy going back and watching this movie. But for those of you who aren't familiar with it, Essentially, it's a movie about Fred Savage, and he has an autistic brother. So they decide to basically run away and hitchhike, I guess, cross country, which is always safe, and go to the World Video Game Championships in California. So as they go along, of course, he has this little brother hustling kids in arcades for money. It's very similar to Rain Man in a way, but with Nintendo instead of blackjack and poker. So, it's a fun movie. And I think even too for parents, maybe you have kids who are younger who are just getting into video games or, are familiar with the Super Mario Brothers series, show them this movie. I think they'll get a kick out of the fashion and how rabid people were in the 80s and early 90s for this type of, I guess, video game arcade culture.
So now that you know that you're watching this, you're aware of Super Mario Brothers 3, you're not maybe as dazzled by the introduction of it. Does the movie still hold up?
It does. There's definitely cheesy parts for sure, but there's still a part of you when you're watching it and you see the excitement of the crowd at the World Nintendo Championships and how jacked up people are for this big reveal. It's pretty funny, and you can't help but have a smile on your face as you watch it. It's total comfort food for people like myself who are really into retro video games.
But I think during the pandemic too, a lot of people have felt a lot of comfort in nostalgic cultural finds, right? And so going back to things that they loved in their youth, did you find that was part of what attracted you to it right now?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And don't get me wrong, this is not Citizen Kane by any means, but it's just one of those things that's, really fun to put on. And I mean, I've seen the movie probably dozens of times since, I was probably a little kid. So, it is fun to go back and watch that stuff. And yeah, it makes you think of oh yeah, I do remember going to see this in the theater with friends. And oh yeah, I totally forgot about that video game that they're playing. And of course they talk about the Power Glove. So yeah, it's just, like I said, total comfort food in times that are, not the happiest for everyone.
As we mentioned at the top of the show, we're talking about the Young Readers' Choice Awards. Kyle, you are involved with this award here at EPL. Could you tell listeners about the award, what it is, and how EPL is involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So YRCA is the Young Readers' Choice Awards. I'll refer to it as YRCA throughout here because that's kind of how the kids know it, and that's how we know it in our branches. But essentially, it's a reading promotion program. It tries to get youth reading for pleasure by pitting books against each other and asking youth to vote for their favorites. So it's actually hosted by an organization called the Pacific Northwest Library Association. And kids throughout Alaska, Alberta, BC, Idaho, Montana, and Washington all vote on their favorite titles each year. So there are 3 divisions with a rough age range attached to those divisions. So there's the junior division, which is primarily for grades 4 to 6, the intermediate division, which is for grades 7 to 9, and then our senior division, which is for grades 10 to 12. Of course, people read across those divisions. It's not really strict based on your age. It's whatever kind of books you're most interested in. But we kind of thought it's unfair to pit, a YA book against a middle grades book because there's a different audience there. These divisions always have 8 nominees each year. There's a lot of care taken among the librarians across the region to construct lists that really appeal to a wide range of readers. So there's really something in them for everyone. You'll find graphic novels, fantasy, adventure, comedy, horror. So yeah, there's just a really great breadth of options available.
It's kind of interesting you talking about pitting these books up against each other. I can't help but think of, obviously, March Madness. Caroline, we love our pitting titles up against each other and letting the public decide who should win. But I think it's really cool because, yeah, this program is, essentially aimed at, kids in grades 4 through 12. So it's really cool that I know that they really get behind these books and classrooms really get involved too, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So that's a huge part of EPL's efforts is in visiting those classrooms to promote them, working with our school partners, especially. And we try to visit every school with a grade 4 to 6 program in the city, if possible. We also visit junior highs and high schools to promote them. But they always get very excited about the fact that this is really their award. They get to vote for the winner. They also get to nominate future nominees. So it's all kind of in their hands. They have a lot of power in influencing this, especially the Edmonton kids, because they take up about 50% of all the votes. So they usually dictate the winner, actually. Edmonton has the greatest participation in this program, despite it being a larger geographic area. And actually this year, they had 80% of all the votes. So they really chose the winner this year.
Way to go, Edmonton.
Yeah.
Well, now we know, in addition to 50-50 raffles, Edmontonians love YRCA awards. Just let them vote on something and buy 50-50 raffles.
Yeah.
So you kind of mentioned about some of the titles that have been nominated and everything. There's actually been some pretty big titles that have won this award in the past. Can you share some of those titles that maybe most listeners might have heard of?
Yeah, well, if it's okay with you, I'll just start with who won last year, because some people maybe didn't hear that. We weren't able to do the major announcement to schools like we did in the past because the closures that occurred. So last year,
there were a few other things going on at the time.
They were a little occupied with figuring out this online learning thing. So, but we actually had 3 awesome winners last year. The junior division was a winner called Refugee by Alan Gratz. And that actually that had the interconnected stories of a boy from 30s Nazi Germany, a girl from Cuba in 1994, and a boy from modern day Syria, kind of all interwoven throughout. So that was our junior winner. Our intermediate winner was Insignificant Events in the Life of a Cactus by Dusty Bowling. And then the senior winner was The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. And I think that one probably needs no introduction. Interestingly enough, though, that actually did win before the killing of George Floyd and the massive protests and kind of greater exposure to the Black Lives Matter movement that occurred so that was last year. But, one of the annual components of the YRCA presentations when we visit schools is that we put up a slide of all the past winners, and the books kind of bounce into the slide. And it's really awesome to go and watch, because the kids, as they see these past winners come in, they're just, oh, I read that one. I loved it. Like, they're so excited to see these books come up there. So some winners, to get back to your question, include The Hidden Oracle by Rick Riordan. Quite a few Rick Riordan books have won. So Percy Jackson series, for example. Dogman by Dave Pilkey won. Wonder by R.J. Palacio. Drama by Raina Telgemeier. The Fault in Our Stars by John Green, Maze Runner, Holes, lots of books that have been made into movies as well. So that's something we tell kids when we visit them, their classes as well, is that if a book wins YRCA, it's more likely to be made into a movie, and you can influence that. That we may be fibbing a little bit, but regardless, they get pretty excited about that possibility.
We brought up Dogman on this show before, last summer's Kids Pop Culture Confessions. Our guest, Luca, he absolutely loved Dogman. He had a perfect description of it, I thought.
Yeah, and Dogman, it won by a landslide in that year, so it was not even close.
Nice.
Yeah. The award really does kind of capture whatever the moment is in terms of what kids are reading. And we were kind of joking about it, but I think that the ability to vote is such a huge part of this. Having your voice heard, being an influencer is a really empowering thing. And I think that that's really meaningful for kids. Like, it's baked right into the title. The young readers, this is their choice. I mean, that's why it's a great title for this award. But yeah, I think that their voting is what makes this award so special.
Absolutely, yeah, and the educators and librarians and teachers across the city that work with their classes to get them to vote at the end of the year. There are a lot of people who are supporting this project, but the youth and their enthusiasm is what keeps it going every year, for sure.
Yeah. So a big part of this program, as you mentioned, was going into schools, letting them know about the titles, doing these amazing presentations that get the kids really excited about what the titles are. Obviously, we're in a bit of a different world right now. Do you know if the process is going to be changing this year, and what it might look like to do virtual visits?
Yeah, I think absolutely. The process changed last year. We extended the voting a little bit. Our presentations were cut short because we couldn't get into classrooms towards the end of the year there. And it will definitely look different this year as well. By the time this podcast comes out, we may even have new announcements from the Ministry of Education or the school boards to kind of see how they're going to be reacting to the changing environment that we're living in. So this year, I can't say exactly what we're going to do. Virtual visits are going to be a component of them. And we're looking forward to working with schools to kind of have a mixture of options that work for them. So possibly some live presentations, so live virtual presentations for their classes, as well as taped options of some of our great staff giving book talks, maybe with skits involved. But we're trying to work out some of those dynamics right now and figure out how we can best serve those schools and still get those kids really excited about reading.
I have to quickly ask, skits? Like what? Like how
Bryce.
fun are those to put
yes.
together, and what might a skit for YRCA look like?
So, I mean, the biggest part of these presentations is book talks. So we spend about, 30 to 90 seconds per book, just really pumping the kids up and getting them excited about each individual book. And so some of these book talks are written in a way that there's interplay between two people that are acting out a component of the book, or they're giving a bit of a monologue. So when I say skits, I'm using it pretty loosely, but that's possibly what we can look forward to. And we'll let you know when you can tune in, Bryce.
Oh, please do.
When I do some training here at the library, we have a few moments where we ask for volunteers for a skit, basically, but we call it a theatrical interlude. And so I think that really captures what's happening with these book talks, because it's not kids want something to get excited about. They want to be excited, and we want to help them get excited. And so as much as we can give them to describe what the books are, find out what those hooks are, to get them interested, we're open to doing it in a lot of different ways.
Totally. We have amazing staff across this organization that contribute to the book talks every year. And so it's very exciting to see what they come up with every year and ways to engage kids. Another new thing actually that's come up recently is book trailers. Some publishers are creating trailers like you'd see for a movie. And so when we've been going into classrooms, we've been showing some of them as well. And obviously the production level can exceed EPL's capacity at points, so they can have some pretty cool hooks that gets kids even further excited.
Yeah, some of those I've seen some of those book trailers, and the budget on those is we can't compete with that. But the one way I guess we kind of, in my opinion, I think we do compete is like you said, Kyle, the enthusiasm from staff. I have worked on the YRCA campaign in the past from a marketing standpoint, and I've seen some of the book talk presentations, and that was the one thing I think my first year working on it totally blew me away, was the enthusiasm from the librarians. And so yeah, I can only imagine that. Like the presentation I saw, they were very enthusiastic just for staff. So I can only imagine that is probably doubled for when they actually go out and visit kids in classrooms.
Absolutely. Yeah. They feed off that energy. It's quite exciting.
Yeah. So let's chat about some of the finalists this year. You mentioned the winners from last year, but are there any, standout titles from this year's nominees?
Well, how much time do we have? We have 24 books and 3 divisions. So how many titles would you like me to preview?
Maybe one from each.
One from each. Okay, that sounds good. So from junior division, I'll talk about Sweep, the Story of a Girl and Her Monster by Jonathan Oxier. It's a Canadian book, actually, and it looks at 11-year-old Nan Sparrow, who's a struggling chimney sweep in Victorian London. So some historical fiction here. She's escaped from her abusive master with the help of an ash-covered monster. So it's kind of like a golem. Golem? Is that how you pronounce them? Goyim? I'm not sure. I think it's a golem. It's like a Jewish mythological creature.
Gotcha.
So this is a really interesting historical fiction book. It's got hints of magical realism in it as well. And it's got that Canadian connection. So a lot of kids are really interested in this book. It has so many elements that appeal to them. For the intermediate division, City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab is getting a lot of interest. In this, we have a young girl who can see ghosts after having a near-death experience. And it's the start of a new series with book 2 already released. So it's maybe start of one of those classic trilogies that kids really love to read through. There's a really great friendship story in this one. If you think of Casper the Friendly Ghost, there's a bit of a friendship that she has with ghosts. She travels to Edinburgh, so there's a really cool, spooky kind of environment in it as well. I know that they have a great ghost and kind of sordid history in Edinburgh that people can kind of get into. So yeah, that's kind of the pick for intermediate that I like to highlight. And then for the senior division, let's see here. A Very Large Expanse of Sea by Tahira Mafi is one that I read this summer, and I really enjoyed. In it, Shireen has been stereotyped kind of her whole life. She's the main character for being a hijab-wearing girl that kind of causes her to close up herself from the world and put up a lot of walls and defense mechanisms around herself. She discovers breakdancing at this new school, kind of falls for the town's golden boy, whose name is Ocean. And through that process, she starts to kind of discover how she fits in within this new environment and how she can approach her identity in a kind of a tricky post 9/11 world that she's living in.
What was the name of the book that you mentioned in the intermediate category?
That was City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab. Yeah.
It just kind of made me think that I know, like in the past, kind of growing up, Goosebumps books were really popular. My wife Cheryl mentioned that she really loved like the Fear Street series. So I think there's something there, especially with kind of paranormal and ghosts, that really hook kids at a younger age when they're getting into, I guess, larger books like this one.
Oh, absolutely. I wasn't actually much of a fiction reader at all as a kid. I read a lot of nonfiction. I read atlases and sports books. Like, that's pretty much all I did. But I did love Goosebumps and R.L. Stine books. I think that the quality, I'm trying to remember if the quality of Goosebumps was that good, but I feel like some of the YRCA books that are being written now that are spooky have a little bit more plot development and character development. Small Spaces is another one in the junior category that I'm just reading right now that has that kind of spooky element, and especially as we go into fall, which is when we do a lot of YRCA promotion. I mean, a lot of people are into that type of thing at that time of year.
Nice.
I think we have some more time. Could we do another one from each category? I just am really into these book talks.
I should have done actual full-on book talks, but yeah, I'd love to.
Show us the theatrical interlude, Kyle.
Oh gosh, so I haven't quite prepped that, and I wish I could.
It's okay. It's early.
It's early. How about Wings of Fire in the junior division? This is a graphic novel adaptation. It's the first in a new graphic novel series, written originally by Twee Sutherland, but now being adapted for graphic novel by Barry Deutsch. In that, you have 5 dragonettes, which are little dragons. I did not know the word dragonette before. They're born and raised to fulfill this big prophecy together. And then one of their own gets to be in danger, is kidnapped, and they have to choose between fate and freedom in terms of how they're going to live their lives. Kind of achieve their destiny. So that one is being absolutely eaten up by kids. They are flying off the shelves, have been flying off the shelves. So I think that one will be very, very popular.
Flying off the shelves like baby dragons.
Like dragonettes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Dragons fly, right? That's a thing that they do?
I think most do.
I think so. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I'm thinking mostly of Game of Thrones here, but and I think even Pete's Dragon too.
I'm thinking How to Train Your Dragon. They were flying. Yes. So I feel good. They are flying like dragonettes.
The fact checkers will not be on you this time.
Yeah.
I think it's funny because if they don't fly, then maybe they're considered dinosaurs.
Oh,
I think that's fair, right? Well, fire breathing. I think fire breathing and wings are like 2 components that a dragon make.
Yeah, I don't think too many dinosaurs were fire breathing.
I have so much to think about right now. But before we do that, what's the next book you have, Kyle?
Yeah, so for the intermediate division, which is a fun division because a lot of kids of our high school kids will read we say read down, but they will read the intermediate books. And then we also have our elementary school kids reading up into this division as well. So, and this year's intermediate division is, EPL staff are super excited. It's the best intermediate division I've ever seen. So one of my favorite books from that division is a book called Darius the Great is Not Okay by Adib Khorram. So in this, a half-Persian teenager kind of deals with fitting in, some clinical depression in his family as well, and his relationship with his father, all while on a family trip back to Iran to visit his grandparents for the first time. It's really an awesome book about junior high-aged male friendships, which we don't actually have a ton of books about, as well as finding one's place in the world. This is totally my jam. It was a beautifully rendered book about a kid who was raised in a bicultural environment and visiting his mother's homeland that he'd never been to before, and how he kind of fits in there as kind of an American that doesn't know all the customs, but still is accepted in some circles in ways that he never was in America. So this is a gorgeous book. The second book is already out in that series as well, so I'd highly recommend it. I'm a big fan of realistic fiction, and that is kind of my jam. So great book there. And then in the senior division, one book that has is getting a little bit of attention right now is a book called 5 Feet Apart by Rachel Lithicott. So that one is kind of in The Fault in Our Stars, kids who are dealing with some illness type of theme. We have 2 teenagers with terminal conditions. I believe they have, I'm blanking on it now, what disease they're dealing with. Caroline, do you happen to know?
No, I don't. All right.
Putting you on the spot there. I think it's cystic fibrosis, actually. So they're navigating an increasingly intimate relationship while trying to stay physically apart in order to keep each other alive. Does that sound familiar to anyone?
Absolutely. I remember it because this book has already been made into a movie. And when I first saw the trailer for it, I remember going, whoa, it must be so hard to stay 5 feet apart all the time. And flash forward to now. And I'm like, that's what we do.
And it's quite funny because this came out as a movie first, and then the novelization came out.
Interesting.
And there are actually 2 adaptations in the senior category this year. So we have Dear Evan Hansen, which is a really famous musical that has been adapted to a graphic novel that's competing in this category as well. But I really wonder how the votes are going to go on this one. Like, I wonder if people will be voting for this like truly out of its title, or maybe it is a very popular book. It's got that really romantic but challenging romantic conditions that I think a lot of YA literature really tends towards and a lot of teens love. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Kyle, you mentioned that a lot of kids like to read across the age groups kind of for the books, but it's aimed at students. I think that adults would really like a lot of these titles, and the library does purchase a number of copies so that we have them available in the library. So which titles would you recommend for adults who might be a bit reluctant to pick them up, but they might enjoy?
No fear. I'm a huge proponent of people reading whatever they want to read. I think there were some debates about 10 years ago, and I think certain journalists every now and again want to comment on how we need to read mature literature all the time. And I think that's just hogwash.
Yeah.
read what you want to read. I think the rawness of emotion depicted in YA is often very appealing to a lot of people. And then there's also nostalgia factors when you're thinking back to your childhood and how you felt. Yeah, I think you could read any divisions books, but I'll focus maybe on intermediate and senior divisions just because they're meant for older ages. I think possibly my favorite book of the whole bunch is one called The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. So this book actually won the Prince Award, I think it was last year. The Prince Award is given by the American Library Association to what's deemed to be the best young adult book of the year. And in this one, it focuses on a young girl in Harlem that discovers slam poetry and uses it to explore her mother's religion, her newfound love, and basically her own relationship in the world. It's got gorgeous writing. The author actually was a national poetry slam champion, so she's bringing some real expertise to the work that she's creating here. I just devoured this book. This would be a great one to listen to on audio. I think a lot of these lend themselves well to audio because of the poetry component. And another one is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi, and this is competing in the senior category. This is kind of Afro fantasy futurism. I don't know if it's futurism actually, but what is happening here is a zealous king is seeking to rid his kingdom of the magical magi. And Zaylee, alongside her brother and a fugitive princess, embark upon a quest to restore magic across the land and overthrow the ruthless king. So this book has had a ton of play, huge hype here. Tomi Adeyemi, the author, was interviewed by Jimmy Fallon. There's a film in the works, and it's got really great setting in which so many people love fantasy and mythology, but this is placed in an environment that we're starting to see a bit outside of that Eurocentric realm. So it's fresh, it's new, and it's got a lot of people talking.
I was reading through some of the finalists last night and just to get prepared for today's episode. And the one book I noticed, I don't remember which category it was in, but it's called I'm Still Alive by Kate Alice Marshall. And sounds like it's a Canadian title, and it's about a girl who I guess her father is killed in their cabin, and his daughter Jess is forced to try and survive on her own in the Canadian wilderness. I thought that sounded really good. Have you read that one, Kyle?
That's one I haven't read yet, even though it is a Canadian title. So I'm looking forward to picking it up at some point. It's not a requirement in my role to read all the books, but I do like a lot of the books. Like there are some really quality literature out here. And another great thing about these lists is that it kind of it can get people reading outside of their comfort zone or their kind of usual genres. So like, if you didn't read fantasy, maybe you're reading fantasy for the first time. If you didn't read young literature, maybe like yourself, Bryce, then this is a great opportunity to get in there. Just no voting, okay? That's for the kids.
Yeah.
Leave it for the kids. I'll just stick to buying 50-50 tickets. So, Kyle, I have to ask. I know you haven't read all of the books, but we know you've got your finger on the pulse here with the YRCA award.
Your fingers on the pulse, your ears to the ground. You're in the know.
You know what the kids are talking about. Who do you think is going to win in each category this year?
I mean, that's so hard for me to say, but I'll do my best. I think, in junior, this one I feel the most confident about. I think it's going to be Wings of Fire, the Dragonite Prophecy. Kids love graphic novels. This was a fantasy series that many kids loved as well. So kind of the marrying of those two components, the format change plus an already thrilling fantasy story means I think it's a bit of a slam dunk to win, but we'll see. We'll maybe see back in May to see if I was correct. In the intermediate division, that one's a really tough one, I think. I had 3 books that I absolutely adored in that mix. So No Fixed Address by Susan Nielsen, which I didn't get a chance to talk about. That's a Canadian book exploring kind of homelessness for a youth, as well as Darius the Great is Not Okay and The Poet X, which I already spoke about. So I kind of think The Poet X might win it. It's going to be a tight race for sure. And we'll see if kind of my adult sensibilities are shared with the youth. I did love the titles they picked this year. So maybe I do have my finger on the pulse, but we'll see. And then for senior, I'm thinking Children of Blood and Bone, which I just spoke about. It just has so much hype with the new movie coming out. It does have that fresh take on fantasy. It's fast moving. It's intense. I've got great action in it. So I do think that one's going to take the crown this year.
Nice. Well, we'll have to have you back on once the winners are announced, and you can be like, see, I told you, I picked the winners in all these 3 categories.
We'll play this audio clip.
Yeah.
Yeah, do or play it just to embarrass me to see how far off base I was.
Yeah, pretty much.
One thing I want to mention about the award is that a lot of like publishing or book industry awards are for when a book is first released. But these books have been out for a little while. And I think that is another key piece on this, in that kids have had a chance to hear about them. There's been a chance for books to get a bit of a following or a bit of word of mouth, as well as many of these are now in paperback as well as hardcover, which increases their accessibility for kids and for libraries to buy additional copies. So that's another thing that kind of sets this award apart.
That's so true, Caroline. Yeah, a lot of them have already gained quite a bit of momentum, and that's why I'm talking about the hype that's already there. And sometimes that hype is just with like the really hardcore readers, and then there's exposure to the people who maybe wouldn't have come across it or maybe heard it mentioned, but now it's so much more accessible because their libraries have purchased these books to support YRCA, and now there are titles available for them for.
All right. So we are coming up to the end of today's show, but let's go through our quick roundtable questions. So I'm really looking forward to see what everybody has to say here for this first question. So Kyle, what is your all-time favorite book that could have at one point been qualified for the Young Reader's Choice Award? So maybe something you read as a kid. It doesn't have to be anything you read as a kid, but just some title that at some point in time would have been up for a Young Reader's Choice Award.
So I'm not going to go with the Illustrated Atlas that I spent a ton of hours with as a nerdy.
Oh, my heart, Kyle. I'm right
Caroline,
there with you.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, yes. We will talk off air about this, but oh, yes.
No wonder why you like Rick Steves so much, Kyle.
Totally.
It all makes sense.
I'm shocked Caroline wants to take our conversation about geography off air, but that's fine. Like I said, I wasn't a fiction reader, but the one book other than Goosebumps that I loved as a kid was The Hobbit. And I don't think it was a YRCA nominee. Actually, I can tell you it wasn't because it was written by a Brit. And so that's one thing that these authors do have to be Canadian or American, because because it does take place in America. So I'm sure The Hobbit would have run away with the award that year. I know it seems like a pretty basic answer, but that was a book I loved as a kid.
Caroline, how about you?
Mine is the book that I fell in love with when I was 13. I think of it fondly as like a first crush because it was the first kind of teen book that that really kind of grabbed me, and that is The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton.
Oh yeah.
That is lovely.
I love it for so many reasons, including that S.E. Hinton was a teen herself when she wrote it. The characters that she created, it's another one that it does a lot of things, but it explores that male friendship element that you were talking about earlier, Kyle. I am so glad that teen and tween publishing has continued to evolve so that it's not just The Outsiders anymore. There are a variety of writers and voices and stories that are getting told. I still have a fondness for The Outsiders.
Did you read that in school, Caroline?
I did. It was read to us by my grade 8 teacher.
Oh, yeah. And I read it in grade 8, too. I actually won an English award for writing a paragraph about The Outsiders when I was in grade 8. So I wonder if it's still in curriculum.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And I was in Ontario when I was reading it. But I remember I bought my own copy of the book because I loved it so much. And I took it home and I had this little bag from Smith Books, Coles Books, one of the bookstores that like you would find in a mall. And I would just kind of wrap it up in the little plastic bag and then put it on the shelf. And then when I wanted to read it, I would like take it out. It was very ritualistic, but I just really loved The Outsiders.
So what are your thoughts on the movie?
It's very faithful to the book. S.E. Hinton was involved with the production of it, directed by Francis Ford Coppola, an early kind of Brat Pack movie that has a cast including Emilio Estevez, Patrick Swayze, the kid from The Karate Kid,
Ralph
Macchio, yes, and Tom Cruise, Matt Dillon. So it's like a who's who of young male actors from the 70s and 80s, and it's a pretty faithful adaptation.
I think my book, it would have been in the junior category. Mine would have been Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I don't remember the first time I read it, or maybe we had a teacher read it to us. And it would have been probably in grade 4 or grade 5 in there anyway. But that was one book that I absolutely loved the first time I heard it or read it. I hadn't seen the movie yet, so... But yeah, I just really remember loving that book. And I think if YRCA was there for, I guess, myself when I was a kid, that would have been one that I definitely would have nominated and hopefully voted for.
I can already see your book talk for it, Bryce. And you are like, you've got some kind of like blanket situation happening and you are in the bed as one of the grandparents. Because we've talked about it on the show before. Like all of a sudden the grandfather can just get up and go to a chocolate factory. So I can already see your book talk.
Yeah, I would have definitely changed the character of Grandpa Joe quite a bit.
Yeah.
My Grandpa Joe would have been helping the mom, going out to buy my own tobacco and all of that other stuff.
So you would have rewritten the book. Maybe I would have be eligible. I will look for your adaptation and retelling on a future YRCA list.
Yeah, we're gonna save the character of Grandpa Joe.
Yeah.
Talk about the farewell in terms of grandparents that were growing up very far away to have both sets is sharing a bed with you. I mean, that was the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Exactly. Everyone was well aware of everyone's business in that book.
All right. So this book doesn't necessarily have to be for I guess younger audiences, but if you had to write a book about 2020, what would the title be? Kyle?
Okay, so I'm thinking of an iconic Gia Gunn quote from Drag Race where she says, what you want to do is not necessarily what you're going to do. And so that, I think, is a theme of the year so far. Whether you had travel plans to see family, plans to just be around friends, plans to be working consistently, plans to kind of go about your daily life without this weird thing that was causing you to distance all the time. I think no one would have anticipated 2020 to look the way it did in this exact way. Well, I guess perhaps some people in China towards the end of 2019, but that's kind of what I'd go with. That iconic quote. I'd steal it, maybe give her some of the resources that I'd win from, or I'd get from the sales of the book.
I like it. Caroline, how about you?
I wish I could compete with that. Mine is just going to be called unprecedented. And it's a word I think we've all heard way too much. I tend to use it when I want things to go my way, in terms of it's unprecedented. So I don't know. I don't see why we can't do this. But I think that it really does capture a lot of the challenges that people have faced this year all over the world and in a number of ways. I remember in the early days of social isolation, there was an online kind of title generator that, one of those things where you look up your first name and the month you were born. And I can't remember and it was the theme was what is your title for the year 2020? And I can't remember what mine was, but I know that it had hand sanitizer in it, which I thought was pretty accurate.
Yeah.
How about you, Bryce?
I came up with a couple, but I think the one I'm leaning towards here, it's called What the Hell Happened? A tale of toilet paper, murder hornets, and face masks.
I am waiting.
That would be mine.
I am waiting I've started calling them Chekhov's murder hornets because they are going to come back in December and be some kind of key to this whole thing.
Absolutely.
So stay tuned for that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Kyle. Can you share where people could go to find out more about the Young Reader's Choice Awards?
Absolutely. So at epl.ca/YRCA, all the nominees are on there. We also have book profiles. So in those book profiles, you can read more about the books. You can kind of understand their read-alike. So if you've liked other books, it can help you know what you're attracted to. Or if you like the book that is in YRCA, it gives you a little bit more to read within that genre or things that are similar, as well as fun facts about the book. So you can also vote on that page, see past titles, and nominate new books as well. So there's lots that you can do on epl.ca/YRCA. I'd really like to plug as well, really briefly, Bataille de Bouquin, which is an Edmonton-only French language program that's very similar to YRCA. So we have some nominees for French language books that were originally published in French. And so we work with our school partner, Conseil Scolaire Centre Nord, and then with other French language schools to promote those in a similar fashion that we do for YRCA. And then similarly, kids will vote on those.
That sounds great. Is there anything else that you want to promote to our listeners?
Sure. I'd love to promote Summer Starts at EPL. We're now heading into August. We are in August, so it's coming to an end here. Kids get reading, log your hours. You can read some of these great YRCA titles as well to log your hours to win prizes. I filmed a video with Emily Paulson, one of the librarians here, in which we do a bunch of Minute to Win It challenges. That should be coming out shortly. It features general frivolity as we stumble through those challenges. It's tons of fun, and it's meant to kind of give kids a template to do these at home. Kind of has that friendly competition, either distanced or virtually with some friends or family as well.
And don't forget too, I'm gonna sneak a quick plug of my own in here. Of course, we still also have Summer Reads, the summer reading club for both adults and teens, still going as well until the end of August. And just like that one, you can go online and you can register at epl.ca/summerreads and basically sign up with your library card, keep track of your reading, and for every 7 hours you read and 2 activities you complete, you get your name entered to win some awesome prizes courtesy of the Friends of EPL. Our grand prize this year is Nintendo Switch Lite. So I can't win, but I wish I could because I really wanted Nintendo Switch. Yeah,
you can't win, but you could make friends with the person who does win.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah, absolutely. So whoever wins, you are welcome to come on Overdue Finds, and we can be new friends.
We hope you've enjoyed today's episode. We encourage you to hit the subscribe button so that you automatically get all of our new episodes. Please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, and most importantly, tell a friend about the show.
And don't forget that we'll have a link to everything that we talked about in today's show notes. So obviously Kyle had some great book recommendations. And if you're listening in the car maybe and weren't able to write them down, don't worry, because you can go to the link in the show notes and you'll have a list of every single title that we talked about. And of course, we would love to hear from our listeners. And you can reach us on Twitter at epl.ca and use the hashtag EPL Overdue Finds to join the conversation. And of course, you can also email us at podcast@epl.ca. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Oh, Bryce, we forgot to talk about the fact that you went viral this week.
I did go a little bit viral. I couldn't believe it. It's funny because I was watching the playoffs, and of course they show a shot of Edmonton, but NBC Sports decided to, I guess, show not the most flattering shot of Edmonton. They decided to show, instead of our brand new arena or awesome River Valley, they decided to show the old abandoned Rexall place where the Oilers used to play like 4 years ago. So I took a screenshot of it. I posted it on Twitter, and it absolutely blew up.
So if we have any, if we have any new listeners here that have joined us because of Bryce's tweet, welcome.
Yeah, hopefully you did. Again, quite a few new followers on Twitter because of it. So yeah, if you're joining us for the first time, thank you.
Was it a live shot of like the Coliseum, or was it their file footage of where the Oilers play?
Okay, so this is going to make for a great outtake. So there is a little bit of a story behind it, I found out. So luckily, I have a friend who works for the Edmonton Oilers. So around the same time I posted that tweet, I send my friend who's involved in the bubble and everything that's going on right now. And so I sent him the photo. I was like, oh, great shot of Edmonton as a joke, just basically in our group chat. And it's funny because I thought he was joking around because he was like, oh, I'm going to go talk to the TV guys about this. And I honestly thought he was just joking around. Turns out, no, they actually did. It went up as far as, I think, some very high people at NBC Sports. So that photo was shared. And so that shot of Edmonton was actually taken on top of the JW Marriott. So there was nothing. So it was a new shot, and I think they were just trying to show the old arena for whatever reason. But it was just a very
my gosh! I can see them just scanning the horizon, being like, "Oh no, not the arena right in front of us. Let's go to the one in the distance."
Yeah,
yeah. Well, even if you didn't want to get a shot of the new arena, turn the camera around if you're on top of the hotel and get that shot of
River Valley's right there.
Right. Totally.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, we kind of thought maybe that was like an old shot from when NBC would have been here for the 2006 playoffs, but no, it had been shot just a few days prior. So there we go.
I mean, it's not much more dishonest than Alberta's marketing campaign to get the hub Edmonton to become a hub city with all the photos of the Rockies that are 4 hours away.
I was thinking of that the other day. When I go to work, I take transit, and our bus goes, I don't want to say through the bubble, but the part where the bubble meets the street, and they have to block it off, and then like they stop and people will cross, and you can see people in the bubble walking by. And I was just thinking, I wonder how they're enjoying their mountain views.